This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Today, we spend the hour looking at the ongoing opioid epidemic and how it's spread across the United States. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50. But during a speech on Tuesday, President Trump claimed the numbers are way down. He spoke in Nashville, Tennessee.
We got $6 billion for opioid and getting rid of that scourge that's taking over our country. And the numbers are way down. We're getting the word out. Bad stuff. You go to the hospital, you have a broken arm, you come out, you're a drug addict with this crap. It's way down. We're doing a good job with it. But we got $6 billion to help us with opioid.
In fact, the latest statistics show there was an increase of opioid-related deaths and overdoses during Trump's first year in office. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, drug overdose deaths involving opioids rose to about 46,000 for the 12-month period that ended October 2017, up about 15% from October 2016. The epidemic has been so widespread that life expectancy is falling in the United States for the first time in 50 years. Meanwhile, the White House says it's about to launch a series of public service announcements next week on opioid dangers aimed at young people. The ads were developed with Kellyanne Conway, Trump's point person on opioids. This comes as the New York Times published a confidential Justice Department report this week that found manufacturers of the drug Oxycontin had access to information showing it was addictive as early as 1996, the first year after the drug hit the market. Purdue Pharma executives were told Oxycontin was being crushed and snorted for its powerful narcotic, but still promoted it as less addictive than other opioid painkillers. This report is especially damning because Purdue executives have testified before Congress that they were unaware of the drug's growing abuse until years after it was on the market. Well, for more, we're joined by Barry Meyer, the reporter who broke the story for the New York Times, which is headlined, "Origins of an Epidemic, Purdue Pharma Knew Its Opioids Were Widely Abused." Barry Meyer was a reporter at the New York Times for nearly 30 years, the first journalist to shed a national spotlight on the abuse of Oxycontin. His book, Painkiller, An Empire of Deceit and the Origin of America's Opioid Epidemic, was published this week in an updated and expanded edition. He's won the Pulitzer Prize and 2 George Polk Awards for his past reporting on the intersection of business, medicine, and public health. Barry Meyer, welcome to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. We'll talk about this latest Justice document that you just got a hold of.
Right. So the basic outlines are this. As you noted, Purdue Pharma has claimed that it first became aware of Oxycontin's growing abuse in early 2000. That was about 4 years after its introduction. In fact, what this document showed is that the company had extensive information about Oxycontin's abuse in 1997, 1998, 1999.
20 years ago.
Yes, and concealed that information. Didn't tell the FDA, didn't tell doctors, didn't tell patients. And this was a very damning report. I mean, the crimes were so significant that the prosecutors who spent 4 years investigating the company recommended that 3 top executives of Purdue Pharma be indicted for a series of felony crimes like conspiracy to defraud the United States, false statements, and things of that nature. Unfortunately, their efforts were blocked by top administration officials within the Justice Department.
So explain what actually took place.
What took place is the following. Purdue Pharma was given permission to market Oxycontin as less prone to abuse and addiction than competing narcotics. I mean, this sort of was like
drugs
a
like
gift.
Vicodin
Yes,
and others.
Exactly. It was a gift from the FDA. They took that gift and they ran with it. They told doctors not only that it might be less prone to abuse and addiction, but that it would be less prone to abuse and addiction. In 2007, they admitted basically lying to doctors, lying to patients by misrepresenting what they had been allowed to say. What we didn't know was that during the course of the investigation that led to that confession, the federal government had also uncovered information to show that not only had they mismarketed the drug, they were aware, almost from the beginning, that people were abusing OxyContin, significantly abusing OxyContin, and they concealed that information. Had they sent a warning about that to the public, OxyContin would have never become a billion-dollar drug, and thousands of lives wouldn't have been affected by it.
We're going to talk about the origins of OxyContin, the Sackler family. We're going to talk about how this drug company grew. But right now, your book came out like over 15 years ago, Painkiller.
Right. That's
before the company was indicted. And the corporate officials were indicted. Talk about Rudolph Giuliani, now once again in the headlines because he is Trump's attorney, his role in the rise of OxyContin and preventing a serious prosecution of this company.
Well, Rudolph Giuliani was hired in 2002. A lot of the reporting I did for the Times in 2001 was aimed at the over-aggressive marketing of OxyContin by Purdue Pharma, as well as, the growing reports, public reports about the drug's abuse. They then came under scrutiny by the FDA, by the DEA, and they felt that they needed a public defender, a fixer, if you will. The person they brought in to do that was Rudolph Giuliani. And so he went in with his reputation as a former prosecutor, mayor, and so forth. And
it was right you're talking about right after the 2001 September 11th attacks, when he was called America's mayor.
Exactly. And sort of he took that reputation and he sold it to corporations. And one of the corporations he sold it to was Purdue Pharma. And so he became their sort of front man, if you will, their fixer, went to meet with DEA officials, with other officials, and basically spouted the company's line. I mean, I have no idea what Rudy knew about what was in the company's files, whether he was privy to the information that prosecutors later discovered. But he became essentially the person who tried to smooth things over with government officials. And
was particularly powerful because he was a cancer survivor himself and spoke about what it means to reduce pain.
Exactly. And, he made a very, compelling argument. I mean, this drug has valuable uses. It's needed in certain situations. But, what Purdue had done was to basically market this drug as a cure-all for all kinds of pain. And, and with the vast availability of the drug, it poured out onto the streets. And that led to this wave of abuse and addiction.
So who were the officials in Washington, the political appointees in the Justice Department, who intervened? And this also goes to the whole story of West Virginia and a really crusading prosecutor who took this case on.
So basically, there were people at the senior levels of the criminal division. Alice Fisher was then the head of the criminal division.
This is under George W. Bush.
Correct. And Alberto Gonzales was the Attorney General at that time. So essentially what happened was in September of 2006, this very small group of prosecutors, as you noted, in far western Virginia, forwarded a report, a confidential report to the Justice Department recommending that serious felony indictments be brought against the executives of Purdue. That report contained extensive exhibits, emails, records that they planned to present to a grand jury to support the call for their indictments. It was backed by the local U.S. attorney there, a man by the name of John Brownlee. And it was backed, in fact, by mid-level officials within Justice Department headquarters. But on October 11, 2006, 2 weeks before these prosecutors were scheduled to go before a grand jury and seek these indictments, there was an 11th-hour meeting at the Justice Department. Purdue brought in its high-powered legal defense team, met with top Justice Department officials like Alice Fisher. And after that meeting, there was a chill on the case. And basically, people like John Brownlee were told, we are not going to give you the resources to support this prosecution. You're on your own if you want to do it. And Brownlee had no resources. He had this small group of people who had spent 4 years, 24 hours a day investigating this company. They were facing a company of unlimited financial and legal firepower. And they really had no choice but to settle the case at that point.
I mean, the story of West Virginia is astounding. As you write in your New York Times piece, starting in 2007, the year of the settlement, distributors of prescription drugs sent enough pain pills to West Virginia over a 5-year period to supply every man, woman, and child with 433 of them. This is according to a report in the Charleston Gazette-Mail. And we're going to talk about West Virginia as ground zero and exactly what happened to these communities with Barry Meyer, author of Painkiller, An Empire of Deceit and the Origin of America's Opioid Epidemic. It's just out this week. Stay with us.